Let's revisit one of my favourite comfort foods, fish and chips. This time round I've slightly modified the recipe. I'm also adding scallops and an easy curry sauce. And if you follow this recipe, you too can have great fish and chips in the comfort of your own home, anytime. To enable me to get the crispiest batter possible, I'll be using tempura flour and rice flour. And here are the stars, a nice chunky snapper fillet and 5 scallops. This is actually sashimi from my local supermarket here in Tokyo, which means it can be eaten raw. But today I'm not doing that. I'm going to enjoy them by covering them in batter and deep frying them. The first step is to season them with a bit of salt and pepper. And after that I'm going to give them a good dusting with some tempura flour. As I mentioned, this is sashimi, so it's nice and dry. But if yours isn't, just use a paper towel to absorb the moisture before you dust it. Okay, the seafood's prepped, so let's make the batter. In goes 120 grams of tempura flour and 100 grams of rice flour. 1 teaspoon of baking powder and salt to taste. Next in goes approximately 170 ml of cold beer. I suggest using a lager because it's carbonated and any brand will do. Followed by approximately 130 ml of your favourite chilled sparkling water. And finally I'm going to drizzle in a wee bit of honey. And that's all that's to it. The next step is to give it a good whisk until you have a nice consistency that looks like this. However, if your batter is too thick, just add a wee bit more liquid to thin it out. And if it's too thin, just add a touch more flour. Now to make the curry sauce, I'm going to use 2 segments of Japanese curry roux. And to that I'm going to add 300 ml of boiling hot water. Give it a vigorous mix until it's thickened, then a couple of 30-second blasts in the microwave and whammo, curry sauce. Oh, and I forgot to mention, any brand of curry roux will do. Okay, now let's get frying. I've preheated some vegetable oil in my wok to 180 degrees Celsius. I'm covering my fillet in batter like so, then I'm going to gently lay it away from me into the oil. And to give this fillet a nice gnarly texture, I'm just going to drizzle in a wee bit of batter like this. Depending on the size of your fillet, cooking times will vary. On average, cook for about 4 minutes or until the fish is cooked through and the batter is golden and crispy. And when it's done, it should look something like this. It's just how I wanted it, perfectly cooked, golden and crispy. And still very hot. And it's the addition of the honey that gives it that lovely golden colour. So make a note, don't forget to add the honey. Next I'm going to batter the scallops and put them into the hot pool. Now these guys are much smaller and they won't take long to cook at all. So keep a close eye on them and also cook them until they're golden and crispy. Then you can transfer them to your wire rack. And ta-da! Just like that, some beautiful scallops. And be sure to not overcook them because you'll end up with something that's tough as leather and you don't want that. Okay, so far so good. Now it's time to do the chips. Today for the chips, I'm just going to fry up some standard oven wedges that I had in my freezer. And for some reason, when you cook them up in oil, they're ready in no time at all. Which is really important because it means my fish and scallops are still nice and warm and crispy. And there we have it. A nice chunky piece of golden and crispy snapper. Perfectly cooked scallops. And you can't go wrong with some good old-fashioned chunky chips. As for the condiments, I have some malt vinegar and the curry sauce that I prepared earlier. And as a final touch, I'm just going to give it a sprinkling of salt. Now if I was back in New Zealand, I would be dousing this with some Wattie's tomato sauce, aka ketchup. But unfortunately, I don't have any, so this piece of lemon is just going to have to do. Alright, now let's check out the crispiness and how it tastes. You have to excuse me there for the crunching and munching, but I think that says it all really. Yep, this thing is absolutely delishimo and very crunchy and comforting indeed. And I tell you what, when it comes to making homemade fish and chips, snapper, aka Thai, always turns out fantastic. And if you've never put vinegar on your fish and chips, you don't know what you're missing. Fresh snapper is always moist, delicate and meaty with a slightly mild and sweet taste. And if it's possible, try to get hold of some fresh sashimi grade scallops. They're easy to dry off, slightly sweet with a buttery and tender texture, and like I said, delicious. Yep, when it comes to scallops, the fresher the better. By the way, the curry sauce tastes sensational. If you're familiar with Japanese curry, it tastes just like that, but in sauce form. How about that? Oh, and as for the chunky chips, they're always good. Now you know how easy it is to make some golden and crispy fish and chips. It's your turn to give it a go. Yep, you can say goodbye to those soggy fish and chips forever. As always, thank you for watching, and for more content like this, please like and follow.